It's easy to assume that our understanding of the human body, how it develops, is all pretty recent, isn't it?
Yeah, like a triumph of modern science.
Exactly. Like the last few centuries unlocked all these secrets.
Hmm.
But what if? What if ancient cultures actually held surprisingly detailed knowledge about our inner workings?
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Maybe even challenging how we think about the history of discovery itself.
Right.
I mean, while modern science has undoubtedly pushed our understanding forward
Of course.
through, rigorous experiments and all that,
Uh-huh.
completely overlooking the insights of earlier civilizations, that would be, well, a mistake.
Definitely.
They saw the world differently, used different frameworks, but their knowledge can offer some fascinating perspectives.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what we're diving into today. We've got two incredible ancient Indian scriptures lined up.
Okay.
The Garbhopanishad and parts of the Shiva Mahapurana, specifically the Uma Samhita part.
Ah, yes. Both known for containing some pretty detailed stuff.
Yeah. Right. These texts get into the nitty-gritty of human anatomy, fetal development, with a level of detail that's frankly kind of astonishing for their time.
It is. And it's important to remember, that modern science works on empirical observation, testing.
Sure.
These ancient texts often weave in philosophical, even spiritual concepts.
It's a different approach.
Exactly. Our goal isn't really to say, oh, this was right, this was wrong.
Well,
It's more about exploring the descriptions within these ancient sources.
yeah.
Uncovering the surprising parallels, maybe, and the unique viewpoints they offer.
So consider this your shortcut, your fast track to grasping these historical insights. No need to wade through dense old translations. We've done the legwork.
Yeah.
We're here to unpack the most, mind-blowing and insightful bits for you.
Sounds good.
Okay, ready to kick things off with the Garbhopanishad?
Let's do it. So the name itself, Garbhopanishad, gives us a hint.
Okay.
Upanishad generally means sort of sitting close to a guru to learn, gaining knowledge that way.
Right, that closeness.
And Garbha means embryo or womb.
Ah, so learning about the embryo makes sense.
Pretty much. It's part of the Atharva Veda, one of the four main Vedas, and it's attributed to a sage named Maharshi Pipalada.
And it wasn't just hidden away, was it? It had a stated purpose according to the text itself.
Oh, absolutely, and quite a profound one.
Yeah.
The Garbhopanishad explicitly says its purpose is for self-study, self-realization, understanding the true purpose of life, and ultimately attaining moksha.
Moksha, liberation.
Liberation, yeah.
Yeah.
Freedom from the cycle of birth and death through spiritual knowledge. So it wasn't just about biology for its own sake.
No, it was tied into something much bigger.
Definitely. It was woven into this larger spiritual understanding.
So that's a key insight right there for you.
Yeah.
Their exploration of the physical body was deeply connected to their spiritual goals.
Precisely.
Okay, now, getting into the details. The Garbhopanishad starts with a very concise overview of human anatomy.
And concise is the word. There's this one verse that basically sums up the whole body.
Really? How?
It talks about being made of 5 elements, having 5 states, 6 qualities, 7 components, 3 residues, 2 excretory passages, and being formed from 4 types of food.
Wow. That's packed in there.
It really is. A whole system in a nutshell.
Let's look closer at those 5 elements. Prithvi, Apas, Tejas, Vayu, Akasha. Earth, water, fire, air, space.
Right. And the text then links these to things we can observe.
Like
hardness is linked to Prithvi, earth, fluidity to Apas, water.
Okay.
Tejas, fire, is connected to inflammation, but also, interestingly, the sensory perception of the eyes. Vayu, air, is about mobility, and Akasha, space, is linked to, the quality of distinctness, speciality.
And this sounds a lot like Ayurvedic principles, doesn't it?
It really does. It aligns well with Ayurveda, that ancient Indian system of medicine that focuses on balancing these fundamental elements in the body. They're grounding these concepts in tangible characteristics.
Okay, so that's the elements. Now, you mentioned 7 components. That sounds interesting.
Yes, the Saptadhatu. This is where it gets really fascinating from a biological perspective.
Go on.
These are described as rasa, which is like lymph or plasma, rakta, blood, mamsa, muscle, meda, fat, asti, bone, maja, bone marrow, and then shukra, the male reproductive element, semen, and shonita, the female reproductive element, the ovum.
Okay, so they identified those specific male and female elements.
Exactly. And here's the crucial point, the real insight.
Yeah.
The Garbhopanishad states that the confluence, the samyoga, the coming together of Shukra and Shonita that results in Garbha, conception.
Whoa, hold on. They explicitly said the union of sperm and ovum leads to conception.
That's what the text says. Shukra and Shonita coming together makes Garbha.
Modern science only really nailed that down in the last couple of centuries, right? With microscopes and everything.
Pretty much. Yet here it is, clearly stated in this ancient text. It really makes you wonder what else they observed or understood.
It absolutely does. So a key takeaway here for you listening is their clear recognition way back then of distinct male and female reproductive contributions and their essential role in creating life.
A foundational understanding.
Okay, so after laying that groundwork, the Garbhopanishad then describes fetal development month by month.
Yes, and the detail is quite remarkable, again.
How does it start?
It starts right from the very first night after conception. Describes a microscopic nodule forming.
Night 1.
Yeah. Then by 7 days, it's like a bubble. 15 days, a lump of flesh. By the end of the first month, the fetus starts to harden.
Okay, so a progression. What about month 2?
Second month, head formation. Third month, the feet appear.
Feet before hands.
According to this text, yes. Then the fourth month, fingers, belly, and hips originate. Fifth month is key for the vertebral column, the spine.
Right.
And in the sixth month, the mouth, nose, ears, and eyes develop, taking shape.
This is surprisingly sequential.
It is. And then comes the seventh month, which the text highlights as particularly intriguing.
Why is that?
It says this is when the fetus is united with the jaw.
Jaw. What's that typically understood as?
Often interpreted as the soul or maybe consciousness, the life principle entering. It's a significant point in their framework. We can circle back to that.
Okay, definitely. So 7th month, the jaw enters.
Yeah, month. 8th month, all the body parts are described as fully developed. And by the 9th month, perception and cognitive abilities are said to be fully developed, ready for birth.
Wow. The key takeaway for you here seems to be this remarkable observational detail. They're noting a sequence of development for major organs that, broadly aligns with what modern embryology tells us.
The alignment is striking in many aspects.
Now, the Garbhopanishad also talks about the gender of the fetus and twins.
It does. And this is where we see that blend of observation, maybe, and interpretations that differ from modern science.
How so? On gender.
The text suggests that if the father's semen, his contribution, the semen is preponderant, stronger, a boy is born.
Okay.
If the mother's contribution is preponderant, a girl. And this is interesting, if they are equipotent, equal in strength, a neutral or genderless baby is born.
Neutral gender, so not male or female.
That's the implication.
Yeah.
Now, biologically, we know today it's about X and Y chromosomes from the father determining sex.
Right. XY for female, XY for male.
So that part doesn't match modern biology. However,
Yeah.
that third possibility they mention, the recognition of a neutral gender. That's fascinating from a social history perspective.
How do you mean?
Well, regardless of the biological accuracy by today's standards, it suggests that ancient Indian society, or at least the thinkers behind this text, acknowledged individuals who didn't fit neatly into the male-female binary.
Huh. So a kind of societal recognition beyond just biology.
That's a crucial point, I think. It suggests their understanding of gender was perhaps broader than just the physical. A significant social insight for you to consider.
Definitely. What about twins?
For twins, the Garbhopanishad offers an explanation that the fertilized egg splits. And it attributes this splitting to the vayu element, the force or pressure of air, basically within the mother's body.
And how does that stack up?
Well, interestingly, the splitting of a single fertilized egg is the scientifically accepted explanation for identical twins.
Right. Monozygotic twins.
Exactly. So, while the mechanism they propose, the vayu element, is different from our understanding of cellular processes, the core idea of the egg splitting, that aligns.
So again, a mix. Some alignment, some divergence from modern science.
Precisely. It's a fascinating blend. Then the Upanishad moves into an area it clearly considers central to its purpose, the psychological and spiritual state of the fetus.
Right. This is where it gets less biological and more philosophical, maybe.
Very much so. The text actually speaks of the fetus having thoughts.
Thoughts in the womb.
Yes. Contemplating past lives, future lives.
Wow. That's hard to imagine verifying scientifically.
Extremely difficult, if not impossible, with current methods. But we have to remember, the main goal of the Upanishad wasn't just biological description.
It was self-realization, moksha.
Exactly. So this introspection of the fetus fits within that spiritual framework. That 7th month milestone we mentioned, the entry of the jaw, the soul,
Yeah.
that's presented as a key spiritual event. It's a stage where modern science, focusing on the physical, might not yet have a complete explanatory model for consciousness.
A point of potential difference in focus.
Or maybe a point for future exploration. Who knows?
True. Okay, and does the Garbhopanishad wrap up with anything else physical?
It does provide some final anatomical details for the newborn.
Like what?
It lists things like 4 skull bones, 16 tooth cells on each side,
Tooth cells, like buds.
presumably.
Mm.
Also, 107 delicate spots, 180 bone joints, 500 muscles, and 360 bones.
Some of those numbers, like the bone count, differ a bit from modern counts, right? Depending on how you count joints and fused bones.
Yes, the exact numbers might vary based on definitions and maybe observational limits, but the key thing is the inclusion of such detailed anatomical lists. It shows a deep interest in the structure of the body.
No doubt. Okay, so that's a really rich picture from the Garbhopanishad. Now let's switch gears to the Shiva Mahapurana. How does it approach these topics?
Right. And another vast and important text, one of the major Puranas, we're focusing on a specific section, the Uma Samhita.
Uma Samhita, got it.
It's often presented as a conversation involving Parvati, Shiva's consort, and attributed to the sage Vyasa Maharshi. And it also contains a wealth of information on ancient views of human anatomy and development.
How does the discussion start in this text?
Well, the section we're looking at actually kicks off with a dialogue between Brahma, the creator god, and Vayu, the wind god.
Okay.
Vayu asks Brahma about how humans grow inside the womb.
A direct question about fetal development.
Exactly. And then the knowledge is relayed through another sage, Sanat Kumar, who narrates it to Vyasa Maharshi, offering these detailed explanations.
So, layers of narration. How can we break down its insights?
For clarity, maybe we can look at it in 3 main parts, based on how the source material seems structured. First, metabolism. Second, pregnancy and fetal development. And third, fetal psychology.
Okay, metabolism first. How did the Uma Samhita describe the body's processes? It sounds different from just listing elements.
It is. It focuses quite a bit on mala, which means waste or excretions.
Okay.
And the flow of something called rasa.
We heard rasa in the Garbhopanishad, meaning lymph or essence. Is it the same here?
Similar concept, yes. Often understood as vital fluid or energy. The Uma Samhita identifies 12 receptacles or sources of mala, things like ears, eyes, nose, tongue, teeth, genitals, anus, even nails, sweat, phlegm, feces, urine.
So basically all bodily outputs.
Pretty much. And these are described as the result of the flow of this rasa throughout the body.
And how does this rasa flow?
Through channels called nadi.
Ah, nadi. We hear that a lot in yoga and Ayurveda, but the text clarifies they aren't exactly like modern nerves, right?
Correct. It emphasizes that. Nadi are described more as channels for this vital energy flow, more transversal, crossing different systems.
So not like specific wires, more like energy pathways.
That's a good way to think about it, like a network influencing various functions.
Mm-hmm.
And importantly, the Uma Samhita states this flow of rasa is centrally orchestrated from the heart.
The heart, again, as a central hub, not just a pump.
Exactly. And breathing plays a role too.
How so?
Inhaled air, prana, is said to aid the flow of rasa.
Okay.
By filling the minute entry points of each nadi, it helps sustain that vital energy flow.
Interesting link between breath and this energy circulation.
And the text also explains where rasa itself comes from.
Which is?
It attributes it to 2 modes of food digestion and says that this digestion process is also the source of skin and blood.
Okay, so putting it together. You eat, digest the food, that creates rasa.
Right.
Then prana, the breath, helps this rasa flow through the nadi network, directed by the heart. And this process ultimately results in nourishment, but also produces mala, the excretions.
You've got it. That's the motto presented. A comprehensive, though different, view of metabolism.
Does it go further into how tissues are formed?
It does, actually. It details the sequence.
Yeah.
It explains how hair and flesh are said to arise from blood, then head hair and sinews from flesh, bones from sinews,
Yeah.
and nails and bone marrow from bones.
A whole cascade of tissue formation.
Exactly. And it concludes this section by mentioning semen. Semen, again, is the source of progeny, linking metabolism back to reproduction.
Okay, fascinating metabolic picture. Now, moving on to pregnancy and fetal development in the Uma Samhita. How does its account compare to the Garbhopanishad?
There are similarities and some differences in timing or detail. It starts by describing the biological union, the mingling of semen with the woman's blood, forming jiva, life.
Jiva, okay.
Then it details the monthly development. By the 5th night, it mentions a bubble shape. 7th night, a muscular mass.
Slightly different timing from the Garbhopanishad's first few weeks.
A little, yes. Then the second month is quite busy in this account. Neck, head, shoulders, backbone, belly, hands, feet, waist, and lips all form.
Wow, a lot happening in month 2.
Seems so. The third month is when all the joints form. Fourth month, fingers and palms take shape. Fifth month, the mouth, nose, and ears form.
So senses starting to form.
Right. Sixth month, it mentions rows of teeth forming, private parts, and the ear orifices taking shape.
Teeth forming that early. Interesting.
It is. And by the seventh month, according to the Uma Samhita, the rectum, gender-specific genitals, and the navel are formed. At this point, the fetus is considered fully developed.
Fully developed by 7 months in this account.
That's the description. Again, we see this really detailed articulation of developmental stages, even if some timings or details might differ from modern findings or even the other Upanishad.
And does it mention the placenta?
It describes the womb containing the fully developed fetus covered by embryonic skin. That sounds very much like a description of the fetus within the amniotic sac and placenta.
Yeah, it does, and nourishment.
It mentions the fetus getting nourishment through the nabinala, the umbilical cord.
Nabinala, yeah.
And interestingly, it adds that the fetus takes in the mother's food, including all 6 tastes recognized in Ayurveda, through this cord.
So a direct transmission of taste, that's a specific detail.
It highlights that strong connection, that dependence of the fetus on the mother's intake.
And like the Garbhopanishad, does this text also give anatomical details for the newborn?
Yes, it provides its own list. Again, 360 bones, 500 muscles. But also adds details like 35 million hair follicles.
35 million, that's very specific.
It is. And it gives measurements for solid fat, about 2.5 tulas and 3 palas of blood.
Tulas and palas? Ancient units, obviously hard to translate precisely now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the intent to quantify and provide a detailed anatomical picture is undeniable.
Okay, so that covers the physical development. What about the third part, the psychological state of the fetus in the Uma Samhita?
Right. And the text presents this as a core purpose of Sanat Kumar's narration. It's not just an add-on.
So what's the perspective here? Is it similar to the Garbhopanishad?
It has its own flavor. It paints quite a poignant, almost distressing picture sometimes.
How so?
It describes the fetus feeling tormented by the mother's jadarani, her digestive fire, when she's hungry, like feeling the heat and discomfort.
Wow, a real sense of shared physical experience.
Yes. And then it talks about the fetus's introspection, much like the Garbhopanishad, but maybe with more detail on the memories.
Memories of what?
Remembering past births, remembering being in various wombs, human, animal, experiencing cycles of existence.
So this really brings in the concepts of reincarnation, punarjanma siddhantam.
Explicitly. And karma siddhantam, the law of karma, the idea that current circumstances are a result of past actions.
And what does the fetus think about all this?
It's described as feeling trapped, distressed by the cycle, and resolving, making a firm decision that once born and receiving samskaram,
Samskara meaning.
education, nourishment, refinement, sacraments, the processes of becoming a cultured human being.
Okay, so once born and receiving samskaram,
The fetus resolves to live a life aimed at not being reborn, to break the cycle
how does it plan to do that?
by seeking Shiva Jnanam.
Shiva Gyanam, ultimate knowledge, knowledge related to Shiva, the ultimate reality in this tradition.
Exactly. Seeking that ultimate knowledge as the means to escape the cycle of birth and death. It's a powerful philosophical reflection attributed to a being still in the womb.
It really is. So the core message is,
The core message seems to be about the nature of existence. The body is seen as transient, temporary, even impure in a way, while the soul, the jiva, is eternal and pure. Birth in a physical body is due to past actions, karma, and this leads to bondage, suffering.
and it emphasizes individual responsibility.
Very much so. Your actions have consequences, shaping your future experiences, your future births, unless you attain liberation through knowledge.
So if we summarize the Shiva Mahapuranam's view, it's almost like a bottom-up picture.
You could see it that way. It starts with the physical outputs, the mala, then describes the energy system, nedis, rasa, prana, then tissue formation, then the genesis of life itself, fetal growth month by month, then moves into this deep fetal psychology, the feeling of torment, the awareness of past lives, karma,
Right.
culminating in this profound desire for liberation through Shiva Jnanam, ultimate knowledge.
That's a remarkably complete picture, from basic bodily functions to the ultimate spiritual goal, all linked to the experience in the womb.
It truly is.
Now, hearing all this detail from both texts, It does make you wonder, doesn't it? Why isn't this kind of knowledge more widely known or discussed when we talk about the history of science or medicine?
That's a really valid question. And there are probably multiple factors: language barriers, translation issues, cultural contexts.
And maybe how they're viewed.
Possibly.
Hmm.
It's important to stress again, these texts seem to present themselves as, well, knowledge systems of their time, not just mystical stories, even though they integrate the spiritual.
They contain specific, observable details alongside the philosophy.
Exactly. Take that 7th-month milestone again, the jaw, or soul entering.
Yeah.
Modern science tracks physiological development, brain activity. But the concept of when life begins or when consciousness arises is still debated philosophically and scientifically.
So true.
So this ancient idea, while framed spiritually, touches on a question modern science might not have a complete answer for yet. It prompts, perhaps, further rational inquiry from different angles.
It's not about ditching modern science, obviously. The advancements, especially recently, are incredible.
Absolutely not. It's about acknowledging the historical significance, the depth of observation, and maybe potential insights within these much older traditions.
It makes you think of people like Jagadish Chandra Bose.
Good example. Proving plant life, demonstrating consciousness in plants in the early 20th century.
Yeah.
Shows our understanding of life and consciousness isn't static, it evolves.
So maybe these ancient texts captured something that we're still exploring.
It's possible. And historically, we have to remember the role of translators. People like Paul Deussen, the German scholar in the late 19th century, translating the Upanishads.
Mm-hmm.
That's how this knowledge started reaching a wider Western audience.
Right. And when you put these detailed descriptions from the Garbhopanishad or Uma Samhita on a timeline
Yeah.
and compare them to, say, the anatomical drawings of Leonardo da Vinci, which were groundbreaking for Europe in the Renaissance, or Andreas Vesalius's De Humani Corporis Fabrica in the mid-16th century, often seen as the foundation of modern anatomy.
Right.
These Indian texts are describing fetal development and anatomy centuries before that.
That context does create a sense of wonder, doesn't it? About the level of detailed observation and systematic thought present in ancient India so much earlier.
It really does. So, for you listening, a key point is realizing these detailed observations potentially predate much of what's considered foundational anatomical knowledge in the West by hundreds of years.
And it wasn't just these two texts either.
No.
Ancient India had a really rich tradition of, well, scientific inquiry in various fields. Texts on astronomy like the Panchasiddhantika, yoga philosophy and psychology and Patanjali's Yoga Shastras, comprehensive medical texts like the Charaka Samhita and Sushruta Samhita.
Right. Sushruta is famous for surgery descriptions.
Exactly. Texts on chemistry and alchemy like Rasendra Mangalam, physics and atomism in the Vaisheshika Sutras, advanced mathematics in the Aryabhatya. It paints a picture of a really vibrant intellectual landscape.
So it wasn't just philosophy, there was systematic observation and theorizing across many areas.
That seems to be the case. Now, when we talk about this kind of ancient knowledge today, sometimes biases creep in, don't they?
How do you mean?
Well, you might get what some call a hyper-left bias, where anything from an ancient non-Western or a religious-seeming text is automatically dismissed through certain ideological filters without engaging with the actual content.
Right, like a preemptive rejection.
Yeah. And on the other hand, you can get a hyper-right bias, where sometimes ancient knowledge gets overstated, misinterpreted, or claims are made that aren't really supported by the texts themselves. You know, like taking a poetic verse and claiming it describes quantum physics or something.
Ah, I see. Like the famous example sometimes used with the Hanuman Chalisa and the distance to the sun calculation.
Exactly that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Where interpretations might stretch the evidence.
So how should we approach it then?
I think the key is a balanced approach. Use common sense, critical thinking. Read what the texts actually say. Avoid both extremes. Don't dismiss it out of hand, but also don't blindly accept exaggerated claims. Try to understand the knowledge in its own context and see what genuine insights or historical significance it holds.
Understanding our actual heritage, not a distorted version from either side.
Precisely. By approaching these texts openly but critically, we can extract genuinely valuable historical information and maybe even insights that resonate today without falling into those traps.
Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive, it's pretty clear, isn't it? These ancient Indian scriptures, the Garbhopanishad, the Uma Samhita, they offer a surprisingly deep and detailed look at human anatomy and fetal development,
Right.
way more than you might expect.
Definitely. There are moments of genuine aha when you see the connections to modern knowledge, but also these unique perspectives rooted in their own philosophical world. It offers a different way of seeing the body and its origins.
It really gives you a new perspective on ancient knowledge, making you realize it wasn't all just myth and legend. There was serious observation and thought going on.
Absolutely.
And that leaves you, our listener, with a thought to maybe ponder on. Considering the detailed observations we've discussed just in this one area, anatomy and embryology, what other areas of ancient knowledge from India or elsewhere might hold surprising insights that we haven't fully explored or understood yet through the lens of modern science?
It's a tantalizing question, isn't it? Where else might ancient wisdom intersect with or even inform our contemporary understanding?
Something to think about. The journey of discovery, it seems, is always ongoing.
It really is. And engaging with diverse sources of knowledge, ancient and modern, is surely the best way to keep expanding our understanding of ourselves and the universe around us.